Good morning or good afternoon to those of you who are joining us. So I recognise some of the names. Welcome Bola, welcome Carol, Katrina, and welcome to everyone else. Peter I see is in, Peter McAteer. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes to see any more people join us, and then I'll hand over to Martin and we'll get going. In fact, what I can do is cover with you as we're just waiting. For those of you unfamiliar to Zoom, 3 ways of communicating. We ask there's a chat menu. Please put who you are in the chat menu and where you're from, and that allows other people to see where you've come from. In terms of questions, both of our speakers are happy to take questions at the end. If you'd like to use the Q&A menu for that, please put your questions in there. And if you want to remain anonymous, you can, but it's quite nice if you will own your question, and there is a chance that we can to bring you in to ask it live. Lastly, if we need it, there is a hands up facility, and that means that you can raise your hand, especially later on when we may get into an open form of some questions. So housekeeping done. I'm now going to pass over to Andrew to open today's webinar.
Thank you, Howard. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars that we've been holding now for about 4 months, every Tuesday and every Friday at midday. Most of you know this by now, but I would like to say that the organisations that are responsible for these webinars are Constructing Excellence in the Southwest, in the Midlands, in Wales and in the Northeast. So the 4 Constructing Excellence regions, together with the Housing Forum and the Structural Timber Association. And as I've said before, historically until sort of March, April time, we were dealing with COVID-19 topics, but now we've broadened the areas of interest and we're looking at all sorts of important issues across the UK construction industry currently, of which they are many and varied. And this week we have a digital flavour to both today and Friday's webinar. Thank you to Howard and John, as always, for organising and managing them. But particularly thank you to Duncan and Jim for joining us today for the next hour, to share your knowledge, to share your experience, and hopefully to stimulate some debate and discussion as the hour unfolds. But without further ado, I think as Howard has already given you the house rules, I'm going to hand over to Duncan and Jim and look forward to what you have to say. Thank you, gents.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think we're going to start with a question. I think we've got that.
Yeah, just pop that up, Jim, for you.
Yes, please. Thank you, John. The question is, what is your current level of knowledge of blockchain and smart contracts? And just to get an idea of where to pitch this. Okay, I can respond myself.
We've got 85% have responded, Jim, so I'll put it up on the screen, slide the results. 85%. I think that's probably where we're going to get to. So I'll share the results on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I only put in high for myself, so that's probably not a great ringing endorsement of one's confidence, but there we are. Thank you for that, John. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen and the terracotta coloured opening slide. So I'm a lecturer at UWE Bristol, Associate Head of Department for Built Environment, and we have courses in all the built environment courses under the sun, you can imagine, and some master's courses too, including a BIM master's and a construction project management. Currently very busy with the planning for next year and the moving feast, which is what can we expect and what do we have to deliver. So Statement of the problem is we have low technology, entrenched attitudes, low productivity, and zero is a bit harsh, maybe limited progress. I've just come from the BIM annual report, 10 years in, and there is some progress. There is some progress. So, but we do have the first three problems around. So how do we improve on that? Well, these three initiatives or terms of reference should be what enables us to take technology forward in the construction industry: transparency, traceability, and collaboration. Constructing excellence, Andrew, Martin, John et al. And Howard are big fans, I know, of collaboration, and that will, I see, play a key role moving forward, but maybe not in the form that it has so far. That's one of the contentions I'm peddling. But traceability, and with that you can already see the link to the blockchain and auditable records, and transparency is also there, which you get writ large in the latest procurement initiatives of two-stage open book framework alliance contracts. So in a way, those things I've just mentioned are the embodiment of all three in one. And if you can get all three in one, then you've got a hop, skip, and a jump to a better industry. So I'm fresh from, I haven't been lazy in the lockdown. I've been using the time. It's been the best and worst of times, if for some of us. Yeah, on the positive spin of it, it's given me some time to do some writing, and I've got my book to practical completion. So I'm brimming with its ideas and conclusions. So apologies if I'm being a bit of a scattergun in my approach today. But the book takes the approach of we've got the as is position, we've got the to be position, and what are these toddler steps in between. That's what I've been thinking about and writing about, the toddler steps in between. And the toddler steps in between in terms of towards blockchain and smart contracts are helped out by the international standards, and there is an international standard towards smart contracts, which is an interesting read. But just putting up that picture of ISO already raises one of the issues around here. I know that a lot of you are involved with BIM, and when BIM whole scale changes its PAS to ISOs, then there's a collective groan, isn't there? Because all the embedded knowledge and perseverance you have so far in the system is you now have to start again with a new set of rules and a new rule book, and that can be frustrating and off-putting. And but those toddler steps I'm talking about, some of them are hard to take, and it's all very fun for an academic to talk about the view over the horizon, but those of us, you who are making it work on a day-to-day level, it's less fun, but as important, more important to actually make these things work. So hats off to those of you who are doing the hard miles of technology implementation. So this is the big idea with the blockchain, is the encrypted ledger, the safe and immutable record of what's happened. And with the students, I talk about a tube train, a big tube train of data, and how new transactions and events are recorded on the data train and added to the end of it with a hashtag. So that's the blockchain, a huge train of data in the sky. And you can think of a smart contract as something that might get on or get off the train. So a conditional agreement, if X happens then Y, can be recorded in code and registered on the distributed ledger. So that, in a nutshell, is the ledger and the smart contract. It's taking us away from a linear approach to contracting to a more distributed arrangement with all the accompanying benefits. The blockchain approach has been used widely across many industries, from records of land transactions in various countries have moved all of their land registries online. Transportation, aviation, freight, each one of the container ships leaving a port can have a chip embedded and its journey registered on the blockchain. Healthcare, I think we'll see the NHS being a major client for this kind of technology coming up as the records become distributed and stored not just in someone's filing cabinet. Fintech, financial services, big user of blockchain and smart contracts, but they have the benefit of being much more simple, straightforward. If A pays, give them the share certificate is a lot simpler than build a skyscraper with all the extraneous events that can happen in the latter. So blockchain's been around, it's establishing itself, construction's behind the curve and should adopt it. Why aren't we? This is taken from a ICE report about blockchain and construction industry. The main barriers to blockchain adoption: regulatory uncertainty, lack of trust, and what will be the obstacles in 3 to 5 years, cost, question of how to start, and lack of governance. Well, hopefully the question of how to start will be answered, and the trust issue, I think, can also go away. Part of this technology is described as trustless, in that you don't need to trust people if the technology replaces that trust with something else, and that something else is a greater degree of granularity. So there are challenges, but the mission is worth the effort. This is a slide from DocuSign that show you the benefits of a smart contract approach. As you go through the levels, you can simplify life and accelerate business with richer functionality, smarter assembly, smarter performance, smarter analysis. So paper to digital to connected to smart is the journey outlined there. But the big idea of the smart contract is this, which I drew a few years ago. We've got the robot putting the brick in the wall, observed by the sea, which may be a human or a machine oracle, and provided the warranty information is in place, then the intelligent contract is recorded on the ledger and the payment is duly released to the supplier and installer. So that's a smart contract, and the parts of that can be automated. Like what? Well, in the Wilmot Dixon seminars, which were great, and it's brilliant to see a Southwest organization, or with a presence in the Southwest, providing some great examples of this, and so all power to their elbows. One of the things they were talking about was the weather ledger and how the recording of weather events can lead to an automated contract procedure. And they're using the weather approach because there's no GDPR or security issues. If it's raining, it's raining. The problem they've got, though, and the problem for this whole area, is at what point are we doing things for the sake of it, and what point is it useful? You know, if a project manager opens the window and spots the rain, then the similar events will happen as you're trying to automate through using lots of data sensors. So, and it's the same with the digital twin movement. Their element 5, the automated buildings managing themselves with machine learning, they haven't really made the business case of why, of the why. So yeah, we have to answer that question if you want people to buy into it. But in the smart contract evolution here, we're talking of starting with natural language and encoded payment. And eventually you get to the contract entirely in code. And you can say that law is code and code is law. So if the two things are indistinguishable, then why not have a contract written entirely in code? And that is the maybe a unicorn is a phrase that you could have a contract written entirely in code. But in the meantime, we're going to have the best idea seems to be a stack approach, and a stack approach has some automated provisions and others acting normally. So perhaps you could automate the weather events, but and tie that into automated payment of compensation events. But there's bound to be some job for the humans for the foreseeable future. That's the good news. So, but why bother with smart contracts? Reduce transparent transaction costs. Why are we using banks who just sit on our money and pay us not much interest? I saw a reference the other day to negative interest. We pay you to not give us any money back. Frightening. Reduce risks, less misinterpretation, less wriggle room. We can accelerate processes. We can bake in collaboration, transparency, and traceability. And crucially, we can reduce disputes in this dispute-ridden industry. Why? What's the drawbacks? Well, how scalable are these solutions? How do we deal with privacy and security on things which aren't as black and white as the weather? What are we going to do about coding errors? And we've still got unless we're doing factory builds, then we've still got the interaction with the wider world, and we do still need input from other sources. What's the state of the art with smart contracts? There's a project called the Accord project, which I had some involvement with a while back. There's 40 of the world's leading law firms, along with DocuSign and other companies, and they're trying to be the first to get to the VHS recorder. That they want their language and their template system to be the norm for smart contract creation and execution. But it's, as a law lecturer, it's reassuring how close they are staying to the fundamentals of construction law. So we still have offer, acceptance, and consideration. It's just done in a different way. And here is another extract from the Institute of Civil Engineers report. Here's what it might look like. So you've got your sensors, your oracles, using Internet of Things recording. That's turned into a smart contract on blockchain, and that can then inform the client's updates and key performance indicators and tasks, so that there is automation in the process, but the client still gets a dashboard of everything that it wants to see. And of course, the gateway technology is BIM, probably, and BIM can integrate with the smart contracts and blockchains as being the framework or the term of reference. So, as we said, what are the enablers of the smart contracts? Well, I think the FAC1 is a great contract and has done all the joined up thinking that is necessary to bring it on. Interoperability, still an issue. The project bank account is a great model for how the payment should work, but I'm not convinced about project insurance, I'm afraid, with its blame-free construction. I do see that as as something which doesn't quite ring right. But you're going for linear to hub and spoke, which is a BIM-centric model, to eventually this stigmergic approach where everything is interconnected and it all works, magic from the box. How should we progress? Keep investigating the contract processes, keep the curiosity, keep engaging with the tech providers, and invest some money in research and development. If we do head into another recession, then everyone's going to dust off the old competitive tendering book and we'll have gone backwards, and that would be a great shame. And hopefully, if the publisher likes the finished product, there'll be something in the all good bookshops soon. So that's my 20 minutes. Apologies for the speed and the number of slides, but I'm going to hand over to Duncan.
I can see there was one question for you, Jim. Do you want to cover that off while I'm getting myself set up?
Sure, yeah. Got a question. What happens if an automated payment is made for a section of the work that in the end turns out to be not as contracted or defective? Thank you, Stavros. I know Stavros, one of our alumni. I've greatly enjoyed the bottle of port that you gave me on graduation. It was fantastic. Originally distilled by the Crusaders of Cyprus. Anyway, the question. Well, you have an inbuilt dispute resolution procedure, which can fix stuff. And that can also be automated possibly. But the disputes will be much easier to sort out because they'll have a much greater granularity of their causes. And you simply go back to what happened and put it right, or get a semantic oracle or a robo judge to give you a decision. So what happens is what happens now. It gets fixed, but in this scenario, it gets fixed in a much cheaper and quicker way than our wasteful dispute resolution situation at the moment. Thank you, and cheers, Stavros. Over to you, Duncan.
Okay, right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Duncan Reid. My day job, I work for Trimble, who are national members of Constructing Excellence, and I support the digital theme group as a member of that, and also actively involved in my home region of Yorkshire and Humberside. I've worked for Trimble now for about 7 years, and before that I had far too many years working in main contracting, a lot of that doing design management, which sort of became BIM management, and sort of how my area of expertise and interest in all things BIM and digital came about. So I will now transfer you to my slides. Oh, hold on a second. No, wrong way. Share screen. That one and that. And okay, right. So final clicks. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you about for the next 15-20 minutes or so is the Construction Leadership Council's roadmap to recovery. Andrew mentioned how you've had various sort of COVID-related presentations over the last few months. This is kind of those first, hopefully not so tentative, but first steps out from the COVID lockdown, but the opportunity that the roadmap for recovery presents, and specifically digitisation. So this is my agenda. That looks horrific, I appreciate, for 20 minutes, but I promise we will get through that. And so first of all, a bit of context for those of you that may not be aware of the CLC. So the Construction Leadership Council was established back in 2013 to implement the Construction 2025 document. And I have to say, when I was researching this presentation, I'd kind of forgotten that that's where they came about from. And we do still see those very high level guidance statements from Construction 2025 being mentioned in documents still to this day. And it's a joint organisation led between industry and government, with the actual Secretary of State from business innovation and skills and industry. And their focus is three things: digital, so that's a good start; manufacturing, which are, again, we're seeing more and more being adopted by the industry to become a more of a manufacturing process than a construction process, perhaps. And then also looking at whole life performance. So again, understanding how we can think in a whole life way, very much aligned to constructing excellence values and themes, and using that through smart technologies as well. And then most recently, you're probably all aware of the Construction Leadership Council fantastic role in producing the site operating procedures that have been so successful during the challenging times of lockdown. So on the 1st of June, they published the Roadmap to Recovery, and as it says here, a strategy to drive the recovery of construction and the built environment sectors. It has a three-stage plan to it. It starts from now, from June, through the next 3 months with a restart phase. It then starts to look over the following 9 months, running through to the middle of next year, to a reset phase. And then finally, a 12-month plan through to the middle of 2022 for reinventing the industry. And again, lots of sort of similar constructing excellence themes here in terms of transformation, better value, and collaboration and partnership. So these are the outcomes and benefits, those very high level themes that the plan is looking to deliver. It is only about 20 odd pages, and it's come out as a PDF, as a PowerPoint. So it's actually a pretty readable, easy document to work your way through. And it talks about very laudable high level aims as to what the overall benefits and outcomes should be. So how does digitisation actually fit into this? Well, if you go through the report, these are all the phrases through the report where it mentions digital in some way or other. And looking at these, I've worked out that we can group them into 5 themes that I'll then run through. So there is digital and manufacturing technologies as a first theme. There is digital design appearing in a couple of instances as well. There is digital technologies appearing in 3 occasions. And then finally, we have digital upskilling and the national digital twin also mentioned once on each occasion for those 2 points. So we'll look at these in a little bit more detail and see how we might, on a more practical level, actually start to adopt some of these ideas. So digital, manufacturing and technologies. So lots of us, Jim's actually mentioned it this morning as well with the MBS BIM report, lots of people are doing BIM. They have their shiny models, they have fantastic amounts of detail, but the real thing that happens and the real magic and the real benefits that we can get in terms of actually taking that 3D model and moving it into manufacturing technologies and processes is to take that model and to start think about other things we can do with it. So how can we get reports out of that? If there's data in the model, then it's reportable, so we can understand what we need to do. And that could be just going directly at the most basic level out into Excel, or it could be sending it to fabrication machinery. It will automate the processes for you so that you can manufacture directly from the model. If you have that model again, you can start to look about all the other processes that are happening within your business. So if you are in the business of fabricating steel, then you need to understand about the best way to optimize your materials, to look at your production control, how you're purchasing materials, all these other things that are going on that actually make your business run. And those are vitally important, but if you can link those with the data to make these manufacturing processes work, then you're in a far stronger position. And again, you can go to paperless processes to manage your business rather than relying on bits of paper that may or may not be out of date by the time they get to the production's workplace. And when you have that data, you can share it in a variety of different ways. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. This, hopefully, if it runs, is going to be a very loud video. But this, again, is showing what the leading edge can be done now in terms of robotics. So before this part of the video, the robot had actually laser scanned all the parts. It knew which pieces were which, and then it connects the right pieces in the right places and automatically welds them in place. And this is technology that is available now and is being used at the cutting edge of the industry. But again, it is very simple and could be adopted on a much more wide scale basis. We will move swiftly on though before too much noise, and apologies for the loudness of that music. So, digital design. This is taking a slightly different view within the report. And it talks firstly about actually still the UK being an exporter of digital skills. And back in March with our last UK BIM Alliance Yorkshire and Humber conference that I helped to run, we were talking about a report published by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport that talked about digitisation in the UK, and in its widest possible sense, digital sector contributes 149 billion to the economy in 2018, and it grew 8%, and that was an increase in growth as well. So this is most definitely a sector that is increasing and improving, and something therefore that we need to be adopting as an industry, showing the good things that we can do, grabbing the great ideas from other sectors, and helping to push that technology forwards to export our skills and knowledge elsewhere. But also it talked about net carbon zero targets by 2030. And again, there are tools and techniques available with that digital technology. Again, if you think you have that 3D model, that is now a resource to understand other information and to work out other processes from it. So here we see a software package called Saphira that allows you to actually look at the energy use for different options of a building. So you can do some quite quick optioneering, looking at different ideas across one plot of land and understand what you think your predicted annual energy use will be and what your carbon emissions will be. Similarly, you can look at other options in terms of reducing carbon output, whether in this case, this is looking at brise-soleil. So fitting external brise-soleil to the building, different sizes, different depths, and looking at what the improvements would be over the course of a year. So again, taking that initial 3D model and starting to do the really powerful processes to help to digitize and move forward and reduce cost, improve outcomes and benefits. Moving on from that, we then look at digital technologies. And I have to say here, I have borrowed some information that I got from Digital Construction Skills up in Scotland, a project that is supported by CITB up there. And they are really good in terms of actually bringing home what digital technologies might actually mean. So rather than just the standard stuff that somebody says, oh, it's BIM, it's models, it is, or potentially could be as simple as things like cloud-based site diaries. You have that data. We talked about Weather Ledger earlier on, but just somebody actually reporting it in an electronic diary rather than a paper diary means that it's data that you can start to collect and start to see basis of information, trends and ideas, and start to understand what's going on. You can use it for snagging. So again, you have the data, you use the model, and you create snagging reports from that. And that perhaps helps your business in terms of looking at trends across lots of projects and understanding the areas that perhaps you struggle to work in as a business, and the areas that to look at for improvement, if those are always areas that perhaps are coming up in snagging reports. Drone technology, getting far more accessible, far more easier to use, still requires licensed users. But again, the benefits of the drone technology and collecting data to assign against the existing model are becoming more and more prevalent. Equally, down on terra firma, laser scanning technology. Again, far, far easier to use, getting literally the point of just set the station up, it works out where it is, it levels itself, it does the scans, you can work directly off the information. Also, wearable technologies, another digital technology that perhaps also gets not thought about as much, but in recent times has become more prevalent. This is a business called Tended, the image here of these wristbands. They were created primarily for the rail industry to use for health and safety, but equally have been repurposed very quickly to actually give proof of social distancing. So again, practical solutions to allow people to work safely and securely in the current environment. Similarly, another digital technology, ground penetrating radar, here seen to use on a street to survey for underground services. And again, in terms of that risk benefits, having models of underground existing services, where things really are, where compared to where the design perhaps suggested they would be, becomes really, really powerful. And equally then when it comes to the construction processes, machine control technology is probably very well established in lots of parts of the industry, perhaps not so well known in other parts. but the ability to drive and guide that blade from a data set rather than the machine driver themselves actually trying to operate it and get to the right positions is now sort of pretty much everyday technology. And again, right through the whole process, we take that to asset management, the actual running of the property, again, thinking to constructing excellence values and the business outputs and the social outcomes, that real value that's derived there. If you can make this data accessible that people can manage their assets through their smartphones, then it becomes far easier for everybody. And we do this through collaboration. And then finally, through that list, they also mention, yes, there might be some modeling packages. Yes, there might be some programming tools. And yes, there might be some budget tools. But there are lots of other things that are digital that probably lots of businesses are doing and don't necessarily think of in terms of this BIM agenda. So moving on then to digital technologies and how you consume data. And I think this is where it's really important. Yes, you might want to consume it online. You might want to have some cloud solution. But equally, you might want to be consuming that information offline to be able to use it on your desktop without need for access to the information through the cloud. You might want to access that through your mobile device because you are working away from the office. Or you might want to start looking at various opportunities in terms of holographic projection through HoloLens with mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, all those things. And again, it is really important that you think about this data set you're creating and how many times you can reuse that data and the different way people want to consume it. Because the way that your site management teams may want to look at it compared to the people out on site delivering the project could be very different, and the information they need could need filtering in very different ways. One particular technology I'd like to talk about, because I think this is really good and cool, is a fairly new one produced by Trimble called Site Vision. And this allows you to, at a one-to-one scale in the screen on the mobile phone, project the model in against the real world that you're in. There's been some great trials on the A14 for the project there, and they've used it on lots of occasions for lots of different business cases. As you can see from the images below, it could be to show you the next phase of works inside a building with the building services shown, or equally it could be to show you existing utilities before you start going and digging out on site. So fantastic piece of kit, and again, bringing the information down right into the workforce where it's needed to help improve outputs and improve health and safety as well. So digital upskilling appeared in the CLC report. And for this one, I think it's an interesting idea as to quite what they mean through this. It's explained in a bit more detail in the report, but I think for me, one of the things that we hear at the moment is lots of ideas of, oh yes, do digital, do this, do that. We need to put everything on the cloud. We need to do all these amazing things. But I think it probably fundamentally boils down to all the existing processes, procedures, policies, all the documentation that every business is running at the moment. And in lots of cases, they may be paper-based, or they were paper and they've sort of got to a Word document or whatever. But those sort of traditional processes, and making those as easy as things like we deal with in our social lives, so that we can take photos and record the information. We can look at our diaries and we can start to coordinate meetings. We can buy things through an equivalent of an Amazon shop online for the materials we need. That our energy reports or the reporting that we need to do is as simple as actually filling in the meter readings on the bills on our app, or that we can manage our finances, that we can pay the bills on a project in a simpler way as we do through our apps. So all of these things that we do in our personal lives and quite happy to use a smartphone for, that we find ways, and the industry drives ways forwards to actually make it as easy to use these, so that digital upskilling is just making our day jobs as easy as our social lives, in my view, I think. And finally, in all of this, and it probably would be remiss of their report as well in the roadmap to recovery that they don't think about the National Digital Twin. So the National Digital Twin, this is a slide from them, from CDBB. This is talking about a massive project that could take tens of years to deliver, but will see lots of benefits along the way, and provides a really interesting discussion point for how the industry and the economy generally needs to move forward. But again, with all of these great ideas in terms of design, build, operate, integrate, none of this is going to happen without the small steps that we've been talking about through all the previous slides of getting the data created digitally, of sharing that data in a structured way, and just moving to a point where data can be shared in a safe and secure manner. So again, linking into some of the thoughts that Jim has been talking about in terms of blockchains and smart contracts underpinning things. So where do we see all of this in terms of the context? Well, if we are here in the middle of 2020, we had the Construction 2025 plan that the CLC is responsible for, with its high-level aims of that 33% reduction in cost, 50% faster delivery, 50% reduction in emissions, and a 50% improvement in outputs. So those things are in place. We are still trying to work towards those. We had a construction strategy which ran from 2016 to 2020, so potentially we will see a new revision of that coming out. And we also have the construction sector deal with the industrial strategy part. So here we have grand challenges and the 5 foundations of productivity, again, all driving us to think forward and mentioning digital in lots and lots of places. And in the context of all that, we now have the CLC roadmap to recovery sitting in here as a kind of pump primer, whatever phrase you want to use, an opportunity with the restarting of the industry to actually drive us forward in a new and better way. So I think to conclude, I would see that the roadmap to recovery advocates digital technologies, digital adoption. Yes, we've got those 3, 9 and 12-month phases, which seem challenging, stretching, but I think something that the industry can get its head around. Restart gives us the opportunity to put digitisation at its heart and an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the industry to move forward. Reset gives us the opportunity to improve productivity and professionalism. And again, looking at improving demand, increasing digital collaboration, before finally we have the reinvent of digital technology supporting the wider aims of Construction 2025. And that was me. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen. And
thank you, Duncan. That was very informative. And thank you to Jim. I'm sure that there's some questions that are going to come forward. So if people have got a question, don't be afraid to raise your hand, and I can easily bring you in and put a question to either Duncan, or you can put a question to either Duncan or Jim. I have an observation that's come in that'll start it off. It's we need to be much clearer on what we mean by digital skills. So I don't know who wants to think about that or answer that, but I think it's a very good point.
Yes, it was in my presentation, so I guess I need to be responding to it in the first instance. It's a very wide topic, and I think it is, as I took as a point today, the fact that actually making a lot of the processes in the construction industry as easy to operate and to record the data with as the things that we do in our personal lives. Nobody sort of picks up a smartphone and the first thing they do is actually read the manual or downloads an app and says, right, here is the manual I need to understand. It is, for whatever reason, that amazing word intuitive, and people learn and understand the skills, and then they get a new app, which again, it could be perhaps like the example today with Zoom. I've done a fair number of webinars, but not with this platform, but you kind of go, oh yeah, I recognize things. Yeah, that does that. And you can't really break anything, fortunately, so far. So I think that's one side of it. But I think, yes, also there does need to be that more structured piece, whether it's at an apprenticeship level or it is at NVQs or higher education, all of those things as well, to actually make sure that the right general processes and the right digital skills are being taught for the industry going forward. Hopefully that helps with Gerald a bit. He may have some more comments to say on it.
I think we probably have. 1, digital leaders, the skills and knowledge required to adopt digital solutions. 2, digital skills, the skills and knowledge required by end users. That seems to be his comment. I'll repeat it. 1, digital leaders, the skills and knowledge required to adopt digital solutions. And 2, digital skills, the skills and knowledge required by end users.
Yeah, I kind of see that as probably kind of like a pull and a push. So there is the pull from digital leaders to actually have those skills to understand. And again, I suppose that unfortunately spirals into a wider piece of getting clients and procuring bodies to actually understand the benefits of procuring digitally, understanding the need for data for the life cycle of an asset, running an asset digitally, as well as, yes, those digital skills that are needed by all the end users in the process. So yeah, I would quite happily agree with Gerald. I think that's quite a nice summary.
Do you think that the construction sector may be a bit behind other sectors in adopting digitisation?
I suspect that I sit in a bit of a rose-tinted space in the fact that certainly now working for a software vendor, all the conversations around digital adoption. But certainly I think from wider experience in organisations like Constructing Excellence and UK BIM Alliance, you can see that there is a long tail that possibly have yet to be engaged in a meaningful way as to why they should move towards something that looks more digital. And again, I think that could be in terms that demystifying it, that it's not all about 3D models. It could just be better about creating site diaries and snagging reports so that you can start to see actually trends of where your business was working better or worse, so that you can get benefits for yourself. I saw a presentation last year from some of the guys at Costain on the A14, and they deployed some artificial intelligence through an app that people filled in every day of just sort of how they were and what they were thinking and all that sort of stuff. And they started to get some really interesting causal links. It's kind of, I suppose, fairly obvious, but they realized that actually doing a big concrete pour the day after you've had an important football match is possibly not a great idea, because your workforce isn't quite as actually on the ball that next day as they might be on other days of the week. And so little things like that can help in your health and safety moving forwards as an organisation that you perhaps might not have thought about before.
We have a question from the floor, which I'm actually going to ask to bring in. Bola, I have opened your ability to use your microphone and your screen if you'd like to bring your question in to Duncan and to Jim. So welcome, Bola. Please come in.
Hi, guys. I wanted to just ask the question around clients being informed and inspired to consider the use of smart contracts, and what you would think, in particular, Jim, are the key barriers at the moment preventing them from adopting smart contracts. Bit of an open-ended question, but just wanted your view really on the key barriers at the moment.
Jim, are you there? Do you want to answer that question?
He needs to unmute himself.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so thanks, Bola. Nice to see you. Yeah, so the client will want to know, how does this make it cheaper, better, or quicker for me? And until there is a complete answer to that, and the client doesn't feel like they are going to just sponsor other people's learning curves, it's tricky. It's tricky, but I mean, what we've got in construction is we've got technological solutions which the questions are still being worked out for. You know, in lots of other industries, they articulate a need for a solution and then go and get it. Well, it strikes me that people like Duncan have got a lot of solutions and are waiting for the need to be articulated properly by their clients. So yeah, I think it's partly the business case has to be compelling for the clients to do this. But there are things that will lead to that, such as short skills of labor shortage, you know, overpopulation, smart cities. That we are, the push factors are there. It just needs a bold client. The public sector is doing lots of good things, but we've always had the problem of, will that translate to the private sector? And usually in the private sector, there's a bank behind a client, and however enlightened the client feels, the bank says, get me an amended JCT contract and to beat the supply chain with. So lots of challenges, but if we build it, they will come. That's my thought on that, Bola.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Can I run with my second question?
Please do.
Okay. So to that point around, okay, clients need to be led, and there are other nuances around adoption. In terms of the sector, and in my case, the surveying profession itself, what kinds of skills would you suggest could be recommended or proffered towards the industry to get up to speed on the need for smart contracts? And I know you've given me the CLC guide, but I thought, anything else other than the CLC guide?
Well, I really liked Duncan's making life as easy as our social lives, so which presupposes we have an easier social life, which is, but yeah, I mean, just lead by example and show them. I mean, if you've got this stuff on your smartphone whilst you're with a client and you can see how easy it is to do these things, then the penny will drop and they will want it. We're very good at we want the latest shiny thing, and especially when it's as useful as all this is. So what do you think, Duncan?
Yeah, have to say, not a major expert in terms of contracts. Had to fend off various versions of amended JCTs in my past as a contractor, so that's probably where my skills come from. What I think, though, as a more optimistic view going forward is we probably saw about 10-15 years ago sustainability as being a sort of horrible add-on that we had to try and work out what to do and how to sort of appease people as a box ticking exercise, particularly for certification like BREEAM. Then suddenly clients and landlords realized, actually, if their office block A had a BREEAM certificate at a certain level, there was a premium in rentals. And I think that BIM is possibly in that sort of stage, that perhaps where we were 25 years ago with health and safety, then 15 years ago with sustainability, we're possibly 5 years into this process with digitisation, that suddenly at some point there is going to be a sort of financial penny dropping, that actually having data about the asset, and it might come out of building regulatory reforms of suddenly actually having to prove what materials are in your building as a result of the terrible tragedy at Grenfell, or it could be in terms of taxation requirements, that suddenly embedded carbon becomes a thing, and HMRC may have some default tax calculator for your 20-story office block, but if you actually know from the data in your asset what the real value is, you might be able to get yourself reduced taxation on your asset. So I think there is a sort of carrot and stick perhaps here, that having that data will allow you to actually respond more accurately and should therefore be allowed you to respond more quickly. So teaming that up with enlightened clients and smart contracts potentially could be a win-win all round. But somewhere along this line, we kind of need that tipping point that suddenly data has sufficient value to the client side, that they start to contract on the basis of data as well as the physical asset.
Yeah, fabulous. Any ideas and any reference points of good practice at the moment? Any early adopters in terms of clients using either smart contracts and or an array of digital tools?
I'm not personally aware of anything on smart contracts. It's not quite my area of expertise these days. Sorry.
Jim?
Digital Catapult doing some interesting work around that. Absolutely,
I'm aware of that. I'm also working very close with Wilmot Dixon on the Golden Thread scenario. But yeah, it's a project. It can be scaled, and I'm very excited about the weather clause. So, but as for clients and adoption of that particular innovation, it is definitely the public sector at the moment. I'm loath to find anybody in the private sector, but I'm optimistic like you. I mean, in fact, I've never been excited, really, more excited than I am at the moment.
I can, if we get in touch offline, then there's some colleagues are trying to write the software as a service smart contract language, which you need that before you can really have it. So I'm be delighted to get in contact and
I'll follow up, definitely. Appreciate it, guys.
I think the only other one to possibly add to that, and not because I know they are, but just because they've been in lots of enlightened client sort of events over the many years, is Great Portland Estates, who seem to kind of get the reason for doing things digitally at construction stage, and are now starting to also make noises about the fact of the benefits they're getting for asset management. So they may be another client side private client in London that perhaps might be one to watch.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Bola. I've got a question from Tony Westcott. I've opened up your ability to speak live. So Tony, either open up your microphone or open up your camera as well. You're able to put your question directly. Are you there, Tony?
Mute. Here we go. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Right.
Great.
Hi, Jim. Yeah.
Hi, Tony.
Transparency sounds great, and we'd all I think can see the ideal of that. But it's commercial sensitivity that always seems to get into the way of transparency. That must be quite a challenge for the smart contract.
Well, not if you encrypt it, and you give everyone the Enigma machine to decrypt it on the other side. But yeah, that's in that weather example. Perhaps one reason they've gone for the weather is it's not sensitive. But yeah, I've always had a stumbling block here with open book accounting ideas. Was why should I share my crown jewels with you, the client? I don't ask you how you run your bank or your business. Why do you want to know the intimacies of my business? So yes, I think there are limits, but as I say, I think encryption and adequate security. There are other issues around here with a bit of a wild west in terms of anonymous transactions and who exactly am I dealing with. You know, these are areas that will settle down. I think as they mature.
Okay, it's going to be interesting watching how that happens. It's quite a challenge, it seems to me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Good to hear you,
Take
Tony.
care. Bye for now.
Thank you, Tony. I think we're coming just to the close of our hour. So thanks very much. And Andrew, would you like to come in and close events for the day?
I would indeed. Thank you very much, Howard. Just to say, fabulous last 60 minutes. I think you can probably judge from the content of the questions and comments how interesting it was for our audience. So just to say to you, Jim, and to you, Duncan, thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to seeing you all again on Friday next. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. If you could let us have a copy, perhaps a PDF of both of your presentations, we can put them up on the website for anyone to have a look at. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fine.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, thank you.
Thank you. Here's John, Duncan. That was great. I like that. Giving me some food for thought.
Zoom worked okay for you both then?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.